Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis, and today I am so thrilled to have the amazing Casey Weiss here on the show. Casey is a certified holistic nutritionist. She's a life coach and a mama from Northern California. So we're actually kind of close. She's the founder of Your Case for Wellness, where she empowers women to ditch the diet yo-yo and cultivate a healthy, balanced relationship with food and their bodies. Casey's own journey of overcoming years of struggle with food and body image fuels her passion to help women achieve long-lasting wellness, not just a number on the scale. That is so amazing. I cannot wait to dig into this conversation. Casey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to get the conversation started.
Yes, absolutely. I know that there is just so much that I want to dive into because I think this topic just really hits home with so many women. And if it doesn't hit home with them personally, definitely someone they know.
Yeah.
I know you have a ton of goodness to share with us. So I'm really looking forward to this really real conversation. So this is going to be great. All right. Well, we'll just dive in. And, I was thinking about this and I thought, the first thing I would love for our audience to know is just if you don't mind taking us back a little bit and telling us more about your story of your own health journey and what led you to become a holistic nutritionist and coach.
Yeah, I love this because I think that understanding why we get here really helps to understand the context of what we do. So for me, I struggled with eating disorders starting when I was actually in high school. I went on a trip abroad, a community service trip. And before then, honestly, hadn't ever really thought much about food and my body. And it wasn't until I started noticing the other girls on my trip not finishing the food on their plate. And I was like, should I not be doing that as well? And I just restricted, but not really from a place of I hate my body or I'm trying to do this, just kind of just more emulating what I saw around me. And I returned from that trip and I had lost weight and started to get a lot of comments and notice. And I took a while to develop. I was definitely a late bloomer. So it was the first time and I was really getting noticed for my body, and it fueled me to go down what then became a really negative path. So I went from severe restriction, having dealt with that for years. And eventually though, my body had enough. Also keep in mind, I didn't have a period. And I start to get what I felt were uncontrollable cravings. And I would overeat to the point where I'd feel so full and I would feel so down about myself and say, okay, back tomorrow. I'll go back on my plan. I'll count all my calories, my fitness pal, doing crazy things.
Right.
And that persisted for years. And then I just then started really falling down the yo-yo dieting cycle. I gained a lot of weight. I still didn't have a period, even though I had gained a bunch of weight back, and really felt uncomfortable in my body, felt inflamed, felt lethargic, felt like I was just hiding. I really just felt ashamed. And the thing was, it all stemmed from just feeling so much guilt around food, around my eating behaviors, eating in secret, because at the same time, I was educating myself about nutrition. I say nutrition in quotes if you're listening versus seeing this, because I thought nutrition just meant what foods are the lowest in calorie. And I had a lot of friends even asking me about nutrition questions because I talked as if I was an expert. And let me tell you, you feel the more you know you don't know. So now as an actual expert, I'm oh wait, there's so much more to learn, right? Well, before I took my first nutrition course, that's when I thought I was the smartest. That's when I thought I knew everything about nutrition. So this persisted out of college, and I would always, try the next thing. Was it do keto? Take these ketones. Was it doing vegan? Was it cutting out these carbs? Was it no sugar? I would try everything, and I kept trying to chase the next thing. Intermittent fasting. versus dealing with the shit I had to deal with. Hopefully that's what I say.
That's
I had
okay.
to deal with, which was actually my relationship with food.
Mm,
So I got introduced with intuitive eating, and intuitive eating, for those who aren't familiar, has 10 main principles, really about creating a better relationship with food in your body, quieting that diet police. And so I worked with a practitioner who helped me in that space.
okay.
Really helped me to, as I said, like make better peace with food in my body, stop really having the fear of foods. But after my work with her, to be honest, I still didn't feel like my healthiest. Yes,
Mm,
I had a relationship with food. I was carrying excess weight that wasn't serving me. I still didn't feel like I had a real handle on the nutrition in a way I wanted to. Once I then worked with a holistic practitioner, everything changed. So she empowered me with nutrition versus it being just like, don't worry about nutrition, just worry about relationship with your food. She helped me understand that I didn't have to count calories, and yet I could feel confident and healthy in my body by naturally losing weight in a way that was of service to me versus working against my body.
mm,
It changed everything for me. And I felt so empowered and so much more confident. I was able to show up better for myself, for my relationships. I was happier. I was actually wanting to go out and see like everything about my life changed. And from there, went back to get my nutrition certifications in holistic nutrition, functional nutrition, exercise nutrition, and eventually got my life coach certification as well, because as I, spoke to this already, yes, the nutrition is important, and you need to
mm.
understand feel your body so you can feel your best, so you can have energy. If you don't have energy, how are you going to feel good? Like, it's cyclical, right?
Right.
The reason why is, if you're a listener, and the reason why I keep messing up every Monday, like, it's not the food.
Right.
Thoughts about the food, the thoughts about yourself. And so when we sometimes do that harder work of like digging through that crap and
Mhm.
doing it within a container where you feel safe and supported, where you have someone helping you figure out your triggers, where you have someone helping you to create the boundaries, the coping mechanisms, that's when the change happens. And then
Mhm.
your relationship with food then becomes a reflection of the relationships you have in your life in a positive way.
That is so good. Oh my gosh. So many notes that I'm taking in my head. And when I say relatable, I mean, immediately I go back to when you were talking about in high school. I remember even for myself, I had always struggled, and I look back and I just go, wow, it's so amazing how our perception is and where our minds are. And
Yeah.
I remember really feeling self-conscious in a bathing suit. I was on the other end of the spectrum where I was more developed, and so I wanted
Mm,
to hide that, and I felt that word shame just kept coming up for me. And I remember, I'll never forget, and it's a very like big point in my life that I can look back at now, not realizing it at the time, but we had a senior trip after graduation and everyone was going to Cancun. And it was this big trip and everybody's going, and I was not someone who was like massively overweight, but I was always like 10 pounds over what my friends were. And I literally told my mom that I remember she was willing to, help pay for me to go. And I said, no, I don't want to go. And it was, I, of course, made other excuses, not telling her why I really didn't want to go. But
yeah.
it was really because I felt all this shame around my body. And I think, oh my gosh. And of course, looking hindsight as an adult woman, you go, oh my goodness, like what was I thinking? I look back at pictures and think, wow, it was just such a distorted view of our body image and just all of that shame. And I see, unfortunately, that it happens with young girls, but it's also happening with women, like throughout a lifetime, still struggling with all of these feelings of guilt. And like you said, it's almost like this confusion between food and really what that is to our bodies, and having just thinking that it's because you overate, but not really realizing there's this like whole journey on the inside.
Absolutely.
So I
And like,
love that you talked about that.
what you said also, I mean, it just makes me think about how people in their 20s, women in the 20s, they think like, oh, if only I looked like what I looked like in high school. And then they're in their 30s and like, if only I looked like when I was in my 20s. And it's
So
just,
true.
we are letting ourselves be the reason we're not enjoying our lives.
Right.
And it's so sad. And I have so many, I've had worked with clients of all ages, and it's never too late to decide that I want to do this from health first. And most of the clients I work with do want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't shame that. And again, like that's kind of why intuitive eating didn't on its own. Intuitive eating is great, as I said, to really get in touch with your body. But a lot of people can get shamed if they want to lose weight even within the intuitive eating space. I don't think there's anything wrong if you want to lose weight, as long as you're doing it from a place of health and if you're doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
And what I work on with clients is how can we focus on health related behaviors that like the side effect can be weight loss versus having the focus. Because when we so hyper focused, and like is someone like a business owner, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're so hyper focused just on that $1 amount versus like, no, what is it? What can we focus on the impact that we're making and the clients that we're serving? Like, and that can be the motivation that can then lead to that dollar amount, right? Maybe that
Yeah.
slow weight, right? Whatever that is.
Right.
But if you're just too like, it's that anxious energy, almost like we
Yeah.
talk about like with dating, that anxious energy that you don't want to bring, like you're pushing those dates away, right? Like if we
Right.
want to bring in that health and put that potential weight loss, and I will say the number on the scale really isn't a great indicator. Maybe we should do some other things. But it's, we rob ourselves of being able to
Mm-hmm.
have fulfillment and joy. And so I want to show women and help women to be able to be happy without that weight loss happening. And then it's funny when they stop worrying about it as much, how much more effortless that weight loss becomes.
I love that. And that's that real holistic approach, right? Like, we all know that food is important, but what I love is that you're emphasizing a holistic approach that goes beyond just the plate,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes beyond so much more than that. And that's where I would really love for you to, maybe break down a little bit how mindset and emotional well being play such a crucial role in achieving a healthy relationship with food.
Yes, absolutely. So one thing, I'm like putting down my coffee. I'm like, let's get into it. So a big thing that we hear about, like from psychological perspective, are the cognitive
Mhm.
distortions that we have and how
Mhm.
that can affect our behaviors or relationships. Also affects our relationship with food. And our relationship with food, as we talked about, dictates how we eat, and how we eat dictates how we feel. So
Mhm.
one thing that a lot of women struggle with that come to me is that all or nothing mentality. I'm
Mhm.
going to be good. I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to follow this plan. And then when
Mhm.
you don't, so you plan to meal prep, you have your breakfast and then you have your lunch at work, but then in the break room, there are cupcakes. And you say, no, I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to have it. You pass by it and you're like, well, I'll just like cut one of them in half and I'll have one, a half of
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
And then you circle back, you have the other half. And then in secret, you take another one. And then maybe you feel like so guilty just from
Mhm.
having two cupcakes that you say, I guess it's not even worth it making my dinner that I made at home or that I was planning on prepping.
Right.
And then you end up getting the drive-through. And then you get home and you feel like, oh, I did the drive-through. I'll just have the ice cream that's in my freezer because now I'm feeling like crap about myself.
Mhm.
And we do that over and over. Or it's the weekend, let's blow it all, right?
Yeah.
When we set ourselves up to we have to be perfect in order to be successful. I work with so many women who are like the type A perfectionist type, the
Mhm.
go achievers. Like I've achieved all this and all these other area aspects of my life. Why not with food? And it's because you can't take that same approach.
That's good.
You need to think about the longevity and the sustainability of this. Because yes, maybe when you're working for that deadline, but then the deadline happens. Stop. We're not talking about a deadline on your life. So
Right.
when we have that all or nothing thinking, I talk about the pendulum swing. If you're going to go so hard in one direction, you're going to go in the other.
Mhm.
And we need to reframe then therefore what success is. Yes, it may take a little bit longer, but it'll actually work this time if we are able to incorporate habits and foods that you enjoy regularly.
Mhm.
If we then as a result stop taking away that like luster around those indulgent foods, because right now you are labeling everything as good or not saying you, but like this person as good or bad. And what are you to think other than you're a good or bad person when you eat a food that you say is good or bad? You're labeling it. That's a bad food. And then you eat it. How can it's inside of you? Of course you feel bad. And so what happens when you feel bad? You engage in other self-sabotaging bad behaviors. So we need to think about our mindset about food, how we're talking to ourselves about food. That's a big part of it, right?
Right.
From a holistic perspective, we need to think about not just the food, but the way we're eating our food. So when we're talking now, if we're getting into more like the science of it,
Yeah.
as well, like the biology, are you allowing yourself the time to eat? Are you taking deep breaths before you eat to activate your parasympathetic nervous system to help you digest your food?
Mm-hmm.
Do you allow yourself 20 minutes to eat? It takes your body roughly 20 minutes from your brain to catch up with your stomach. So this doesn't mean you can't have seconds, but if you're running for seconds after 5 minutes of scarfing down your food and then you're feeling too full after, like no shit, like you
Right.
you didn't
Of
give your
course.
body any time. So
Yeah.
I actually encourage people say put a timer on your phone, put a little stopwatch, and then put your phone
Mm.
down and eat your meal. And after, see how long it took you to eat your meal, and you'll be shocked.
Right.
Can you eat undistracted? And so many times we want to be distracted because we don't want to get comfortable with our own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We're using all of these agents to numb ourselves. Maybe we could just sit. Maybe we could our fork down between bites. There's so many things that we can do. A lot of what I do from a nutrition perspective is really working on blood sugar balancing, hormone stabilizing meals. What
Mm.
this will do, this will allow you to feel full and satisfied, so you don't have to track calories or macros, so you can actually feel energized, so you can feel focused. And if weight loss is a goal of yours, we're able to tap into that as well as your hunger and fullness cues to help you to naturally lose weight without having to do any of this tracking.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the self-care practices, the hydration, the sleep, like it's not the supplements are the literal tiny icing on the cake, maybe like the tip of the candle, versus so much of what has been was promoted, because guess what? It makes money. Like the stuff that
Uh-huh.
is going to be the best for
Okay.
you. And think about the best things in life
Mm-hmm.
that you've achieved when you've felt the best. It hasn't been because of something that you bought. Like, yeah, maybe you bought a cute dress and you feel good for like 5 minutes or whatever. But
Right.
it's the things that you achieve that don't, it's not something that you can just spend money on. And if you think about the diet industry and how much money it makes and how much less successful we are as Americans in terms of our health,
Right.
like let's do some common sense here, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, so many good things. I was going to ask, that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to ask was like those practical tips, and so many of those are so good. And I just think that we forget, we fall into these patterns, and then we are, right back in it. Because I remember even back when my kiddos are older now, but when they were little, I remember listening to a doctor and really getting into all of his things, was Dr. Sears. And he was more of that holistic approach to nutrition. And and that's exactly what he talked about. Is he said, there was this like 2x2 formula, and it was that same concept of like, take longer to chew your food, cut it up in smaller pieces, take twice as long in between bites. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing. And I remember teaching that to my kids. And as you were talking about that, I was going, oh my gosh, these are all of those things that we tend to forget. And I just read exactly what you talked about with the 20 minutes, that it takes 20 minutes for everything to catch up with each other. So if we're already grabbing those seconds right away, then clearly that's when we're going to walk away feeling overly full, and that's when we feel
Mm-hmm.
gross and bad. And I loved the other, well, 2 points there is, I thought, this also goes back to actually eating dinner at the table, eating dinner, taking the time to eat your meals as opposed to on the run. I think our society gets so into that fast pace where it's just like, okay, go through the drive through, eat it between soccer games, and, and it's like we're not sitting and actually enjoying our meals and
Yeah.
really having that time. So that was definitely something that, you know, for sure stood out to me. And then I was also thinking about the other point. Oh, this one where you had said, when we put labels on our food and we're labeling them good or bad, and then we eat something bad, all of a sudden that is totally what happens in your subconscious. I thought, "Oh my gosh, I've been there." I I have actually thought that, like, "Oh, well, I already ate that junk food, so why not have some more?" Like, I have caught myself doing that, and it's
Yeah.
such a subconscious thing. I didn't even really like put any importance to that until you just said that. And I thought, wow, that is, those are like those practical things to be thinking about as you're moving forward if this is something that you struggle with. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that you shared that. And going back to body image, how do you feel like women who are struggling with their body image, their acceptance of their own body, how do they begin to really cultivate a more positive relationship with their bodies? Because I just feel like society, we're so obsessed with appearance still. As much as we
Mm-hmm.
want to say we're not, I feel like
Yeah.
the majority of women still are, and even men for
Mm-hmm.
that matter.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's hard and it's a constant battle. So
Mhm.
to start out, I will say you need to edit your influences where you can.
Mm,
And that's from like social media to certain boundaries you create with certain people. Sometimes you can tell your mother-in-law to not mention certain things. Sometimes you don't have that type of relationship. I empower you all, but like who are the people you're surrounding yourself with online in your
yeah.
physical space and whatnot. I will say in terms of your personal body image, a lot of people like just say affirmations to yourself and you'll believe them. And
Mhm.
honestly, I love that idea.
Mhm.
But if you're just saying, I'm the most beautiful, I have the skinniest thighs in the world, like it's going to feel like BS and then you're not going to want to do it and you're not going to believe
Right.
it. So you just need to start somewhere. How can
Mm,
you say something to yourself that's 1% more of the needle? So maybe, first of all, like something that I did when I started and I really didn't like my body, I
mhm.
went though and I in front of a mirror naked and I would say things and I'd be like, one thing I remind myself is I like my wrists because that was something else. Like I still felt like they were, even though I didn't wear, I still felt like I had dainty enough wrists.
Right.
Not my fingers. I have very large fingers for my spot. I'm only 5'2" for my body size. Always have. But like, what is something, first of all, what is something about your appearance? Because we are talking about appearance, right? And
Yeah.
I would love for you to also say things because your worth is about more than your appearance. But there's
Mhm.
nothing, again, wrong with wanting to feel beautiful as well. So affirming yourself with things, first of all, in the here and now that
Mhm.
you can believe.
Yeah.
And then I call it trying on an idea, trying on a thought.
Mhm.
So just trying the idea of, I like the way I look in this shirt, right? Like,
Mm.
or I appreciate my body that it can do this. Try saying instead of I love my body, I love the way it says, I say, I like how it looks some days.
Mm.
How can we just
So good.
try on a thought of a little bit more positive instead of going to the negative? This actually is much more helpful, I find, than going
Mhm.
into the I love my body. I'm like, I mean, and I also like, I'm saying it in this tone as if it's not good to say. It's great to say I love her. And if it works for you,
Right.
fantastic. But we're
Yeah.
talking to people who are the realists and they're like, I can't do this. And and I scroll on social media of people telling me I can manifest my way into this body and it's not working for me.
Yeah.
And the thing is because it's too far out there.
Mhm.
So you need to focus on what's not 1%. Say like what's 5% more, a little bit
Right.
out of your comfort range of something that you
Mhm.
would say to yourself, but
Mhm.
something that you can still kind of believe.
Yeah.
Believe is kind of possible. And then once we can get there, then eventually we will achieve that. And then we can move to the next 5% and the next.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that could be a really powerful way for us to work ourselves. And I also find what's really important when you're on a health and wellness journey is to find a deeper why that is something other than just your body. And for a lot of people, I mean, your mom, so you know this, like,
Right.
I want to be able to, and since your kids are older, which I don't believe you look very young. So it's like, what I want to be able to wake up and like have energy for my kids. I want to be able to have a good, I have a lot of people coming to me. I want to have deal with my crap with my relationship with food because I don't want to pass it on to my kids. I
Yeah.
want to have a better relationship with my spouse. I want to be able to go out to eat and feel like normal around food. I want to be
Mhm.
able to not be bloated. I want to be able to live a long, healthy life. Like, how can we have a why that's other than that? But if you
Mhm.
heard all the things that I said are all going to lead to habits that are going to make you healthier. And
Mhm.
then that other physical stuff will come, but you won't even care as much about it because you'll just be feeling so much better, which I know kind of started the conversation with.
Yeah.
But as we know, like, even as someone who's been healthy for a long time now, my weight still fluctuates. I'm a freaking human. And so
Right.
you can't put your worth in just, I say, don't put your worth in your gravitational pull towards Earth.
Right.
Literally what it is.
So good.
We need to have more meaning and more purpose.
Mhm.
And that, I think, having that bigger why and then working on appreciating your body and yourself for something more. And also, as I said, this idea of trying on a thought, seeing
Mhm.
how that feels, thinking about yourself as more of an experiment,
Mhm.
it can
I
be
love
really
that.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. Gosh, but this is why I was like, I have to have this girl on this
Mhm.
podcast because uh when we met and through it's so fun like how we meet through our networking and social media. When I was tapping into what it is that you do, I love it because I love that idea of trying something on because here's the thing, when you have this distorted body image in which I have struggled with for a lifetime, the when I started to go through my transformation and some of the things that I was dealing with in my head, because, there are those ruminating thoughts where,
Yeah.
one of the things that I talk to my clients about is having a picture of yourself when you're a little girl or even a baby, whatever that is for you that you resonate and you can look at that and go, oh my
I
gosh,
love
you're
that.
so cute. And I remember for quite some time I had one of my favorite pictures. I was probably about 4, and I put it on my mirror because someone had told me about this and said, how would you talk to that little girl? Because that is not the way that you're going to talk to yourself, or that's not the way you would talk to the little girl, the way that you're talking to yourself now.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful. But then the whole add on that whole part about trying it on, because sometimes we get to a place where over the years and all these bad patterns we do have this distorted place. We can't even bring ourselves to do the affirmations like you said, to say I'm trying to manifest my way into loving my body, but to find that one thing, like, I mean, that it just it like made me laugh on the inside because I go, oh my gosh, how many times do I say on a daily, like, I'm so grateful for my hair, that my mom has this like paper thin hair and she always complains about it. And I think, I'm so glad that I have my hair. I'm so glad. Now, my fingers are starting to change because I am getting older. I just turned 50. So my fingers are
I was
starting
not
to.
expecting that number to come from your mouth.
So yeah, so it's like, but my hands were always something that I always loved because I had longer fingers, and I mean, so it was like finding those things that you love about your body, but also what your body can do for you.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate that because I think about how many people don't have that same opportunity. I know it's all
Mhm.
relative for people, but when
Yeah.
you really think about it, it's like, man, I can get up and I can walk. I can take a Pilates class today. I get to, go in the kitchen and bake and cook for my family because I don't have the arthritis and the pain. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just different things to find that appreciation, and it takes you, like you said, it kind of takes it away from the the body image, and brings it to a more like worthy place and what our purpose is and what our why is. And I
Mhm.
I just think that's so powerful.
Mhm.
And there's so much talk around nutrition, and women are confused. I mean, I think people in general are just like confused. It's like, is it keto? Is it this? Is it that? And so we get so hung up on that because, like you said, it is an industry and it is a, money making industry.
Mm-hmm.
But when we really get back and tap into ourselves, I feel like that's when we start to see it from a whole different lens. So I
Absolutely.
love that you connect that together. I think that's so important, especially for this audience that listens in. I mean, I feel like these are the women that are looking for those types of answers.
Yeah. And
So I love that.
no, I absolutely love how you say like looking for out, because so often we're looking externally, and
Mm,
we are raised in a society that has bred us to do that. Like you grow up to try to, and when you're like whole good job for doing things,
right.
you get your grades. You're not the one who decides them. Like you're trying to appease to someone else, and so that's why diet culture can almost feel safe in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like doing something with under someone else's rules and then getting your measure of success.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of having to tune into my own body to decide if I'm successful and not listening to other people, not listening to a set guideline of rules, that can honestly feel scarier. And so
Yeah.
that's why what I do with clients, I help them build their confidence in themselves, but that's very hard to do on your own. And so
Mhm.
by providing a container where you feel like there are metrics to some metrics for like getting out of the metrics almost, so
Right,
to speak,
right.
and building in that inner confidence and safety, being able, because diet culture has taught us to use every tool outside of our own body. Our
Mm-hmm.
body actually was born with its own calculator that's going to be the best tool to know what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about just getting really in touch with that.
Right.
And going back to the idea of like trying on a thought, thinking about like, what if I didn't use my fitness pal for 5 days? What
Mm.
would happen?
Mm-hmm.
Could I be able, like, think, like, allow your body to run, your imagination to run, and see what can happen,
Mm-hmm.
um, and what kind of life that would look like for you. If it's your just, if the thing you come back to, the only thing that you can come back to as the negative is I may gain weight, but there's all these other benefits.
Right.
If we can, if that is the only one thing that's the hang up for you, I'm telling you, you can work through that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you that we can work through health. If you are letting yourself not be able to experience food freedom, not being able to experience going to freaking Cancun, not being able to, all
Right.
because you're worried of just your body and gaining weight,
Mm-hmm.
then it is time to really think about the approach that you're taking.
Absolutely. Gosh, so good. And I have to finally ask you well a couple more questions because I'm just like, oh, I just want to dig into all of
Yeah, of
this.
course.
But as I know that you're a mom as well, and we have lots of mamas out there. And I think that is one of our, and you mentioned it, like passing it down to our kids. So
Mm-hmm.
many women, we don't want to do that to our own children. And what would be for you, what would be some advice or recommendations that you would give to the moms out there, even if they are struggling and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of going through their things? What is your advice as a mom to you know to have those conversations? What does a healthier conversation look like, for
Yeah,
a mom and like a teenage daughter or even son for that matter?
absolutely. Yeah. So one thing is really not talking about any morality when it comes to food and not using any numbers around food. That's a big thing. You're focusing on food, especially when it's younger kids, focusing on the positives of food versus the negatives. We can still choose to teach your children what like healthier foods are by focusing on their benefits. So
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about little children, obviously, but like talk
Yeah.
about like carrots and like how they can benefit your eye, like talking about the positive effects
Right.
of food.
Mhm.
And instead of saying like that cupcake, it is too much sugar. If you're actually like worried about your child having the cupcake and having too much, be like, we don't want you to have a tummy ache because I want you to be able to have fun on the playground.
Mm,
So let's have instead of the eighth cup, whatever, let's have
right.
this, and let's have the broccoli that makes it so that you have that poop that makes you feel
Right.
but like really thinking about it in that type of way.
Yeah.
Also, kids are smarter than you
Mm.
realize, and they will
Yep.
notice if when you're passing around the food, if you are never having the starchy carbohydrate or whatever. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that you have to eat chicken nuggets and fries, but also I don't think you want if you're listening to this and this is a question you're thinking, I think you're probably wanting to think, how can I incorporate other foods into my child's diet
Mhm.
as well? So really trying to focus on the family meal is a really big thing.
Mhm.
How can I know there's conflicting like schedules and whatnot, but how can we get to the table? My son is 7 months old now, and I even notice a difference. He's eating solids, and I can give him anything. I mean, I understand this will change. I know they start getting pickier, but I give him sardines out of a can. He likes straight lemons. This kid is wild.
Yeah.
But I notice with him, I make a frittata for myself often for breakfast, like as a meal prep. And I've been giving it to him too. And how much he loves eating it with mommy.
Oh, I
And we
love
eat at the
that.
same time. I know
Mhm.
he's only 7 months old. So,
Yeah, but
but, but they really want to model after your behaviors.
right.
And they can a lot of times eat the foods that we eat. I think a lot of us as moms just make things so much more complicated for themselves. And a
Right.
lot of, especially when we're talking about younger children, they are wanting to be like us.
Mhm.
And so having them also be involved in the kitchen can really help when I work with clients who have kids, that are around like the 6-year-old age and whatnot, getting them involved in
Yeah.
the kitchen, making it fun in different ways. And then having with teenage age kids, just really providing an open environment. And if you
Mhm.
are someone who is struggling, obviously there's a degree in which you want to share that type of stuff with your child.
Right.
But as some if you haven't children that are at that age, then yourself, like I honestly struggled with this as when I was around your age, and I want you to know that I don't want you to struggle that way, and I
Mhm.
want you to know that your worth is not your size, and I want you to be able to come to ask me questions, and I want if you are focused on, you want to work on your nutrition, I want to do that with you. Maybe let's take a healthy cooking class together.
Right.
Let's learn about this together. Let's read this book. Obviously, we're not saying read a book and then read Weight Watchers guidelines,
Right.
right?
Right.
I can't tell you how many clients I have that their moms took them to Weight Watchers when they were 12. So it's about being
That
a
was
positive
me.
mind. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. And, not to, I apologize for
No, no,
interrupting, but I
no.
just
This
go,
is great.
gosh, it was that, my mom struggled with her, stuff with her body weight and, and they think that they're trying, they're helping,
Yeah.
it was all from a place of love
Yeah.
of like, gosh, I just, I want you to feel better about yourself and
Yeah.
and looking at it as like that's the most natural approach to that, but yeah, it just, it's so complicated because it's just so intricate because as we know now, again, as parents and as we grow up, we see how whether it be comments that were made for us, I mean, it could be one comment on a playground about our body that sticks with us for a lifetime,
Absolutely.
or the experiences of, having parents that, were doing their best and, doing the things that they thought that they were supposed to. And then it stays with you that you're like, wow, I was that kid who was, 12 years old going to Weight Watchers,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. This is where I think, like you said, that open conversation of and I feel like, even my mom, who is now grandma to my kiddos, we have had those open conversations. And I will say, and I want to encourage our listeners that what you say is so true, that it resonates with them. And my daughter definitely has a different mindset around food, around her body image,
Hmm.
much more of a positive situation,
Yeah.
as opposed to, oh my gosh, I have a little cellulite on the back of my legs. I'm like, yeah, what girl doesn't,
Yep.
like we're seeing all of the air, all of the social media and everything's, airbrushed and now we have filters and all of the things. And So I do say it definitely works because it was a very different conversation that I was having with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's that knowledge. It's like learning these things and having these conversations that brings this to the forefront as opposed to all of the diet trends and all of the
Absolutely.
things to shame people.
And I really believe that, as I have many clients who come to me and they're like newer moms, and
Mhm.
they have honestly traumatic stories of like things that their moms did and said to them or still say to them.
Mhm.
And one thing we can use is we can say like this: being a mom is going to be an opportunity for me to break those chains
Yeah.
and for me to set a new path. Because I sometimes, when we've had that kind of trauma with our parents, we
Mhm.
just want to then remember and just like be grateful for what they did do and whatnot. And while that can be helpful as a coping mechanism, we also don't want to negate how we were treated and how that did affect us, and therefore how we might want to be different.
Mm.
And so maybe in private you can't hold up this thing, but this positivity, but it can also be an opportunity for you, like in front of my child, let me act as if I love everything about my body. And then I
Mhm.
have the best relationship with food. Let's just like act as if that, right? And try and like and just what would that look like? How
Yeah.
would you talk about food? How would you present food to your child? How
Mhm.
would you go to the playground? How would you talk about sports versus something to burn calories, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it said it can really be an opportunity and can be such a gift. And it's really never too late, even if you're like, oh my gosh, you did not ruin your child. You,
Mhm.
the fact that you're even thinking that you may have shows to me that you're a compassionate person, that and that you want to have positive change and positive impact.
Mhm.
But that being said, because it's never too late, it's never too late. So if you feel like, as I said, especially if you have an older child and you feel like it's a great time opportunity to potentially have a conversation. If you have a younger
Right.
child, start thinking about your behaviors now and how you can influence. Really, at all stages, we can have positive impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we wrap up, I know we've been talking about lots of the struggles, but I'd love to hear. I know you work with a lot of clients, and just, if you want to tell us about maybe a transformation that you have been able to witness and help someone through, what is one of the best transformations that you have been able
Yeah.
to work through.
Yeah. So, basically, yeah, I work with women who are in all phases of life, and I don't know, when you said that in terms of transformation, and with what we were talking about today, it brings up to mind to me a client who came to me, and to be honest, after our first session, I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. She was like really reluctant to
Okay.
have change. I was like, let's start slow. And she's like, we'll see if this works. Whatever. Like, just literally like the
Yeah.
attitude. And it's
Uh-huh.
crazy to think about where she's now. I remember her telling me after our experience together that she like said, I'm literally capable of anything in my life now.
Mm.
And she was able to transform her relationship with food, her nutrition, everything. To her, she was stuck in these limiting beliefs that if it was healthy, it was going to be time consuming, it was going to be hard, it wasn't going to taste good. She wasn't able to do this. She was never able to lose weight in the past, and she was stuck. But for some reason, she invested in me, and so I was trying to like harness that.
Yeah.
Why? There's clearly some glimmer of hope,
Mhm.
and to the point where she's now advocating for herself in so much more positive ways. Her relationship is more positive. She is able to show up for herself. She is feeling healthier. She has a body that reflects that health. And this
Oh,
is just like kind of like a common story, honestly, with the clients that
right.
I work with, because it's such a testament to how, when you can focus on how you treat yourself with food and your nutrition, how that impacts. Like, I can't tell you how many clients I work with that end up getting like promotions and raises and finding better jobs because their self-worth and value increases. And so then they want to advocate for themselves there, or they want to then look for a job that more aligns with them because they finally feel like more confident and that they
Right.
can do that. And a big thing that a lot of my clients will tell me is how they then start to notice things in other people. They talk about all the diets and the this, and they used to trigger them, and now they honestly like laugh. And they see other people and other women talk about this and that, like, okay. And I remember a client telling me the other day how she had a catered lunch from work, and there was rolls, and she's like,
Mhm.
"I'll have a biscuit. I'll make sure to also like have some protein and some green, whatever." I'm like, "Oh, I want a biscuit. They look good. Cool. I'll have it." And it wasn't a big deal to her, right? She can lose
Right.
weight and have a biscuit. She can be healthy and lose a biscuit and eat a biscuit. Cool. Whatever. Not a big
Yeah.
deal. And then her coworker friend was like, "Oh my gosh, like, how can you do that?" Or I was like, "Oh, I'm
Mm,
gonna," talking about like, I shouldn't have it. I shouldn't have it, whatever. And all these shoulds and shouldn'ts and whatever. And she was like, "Girl, it's just a biscuit at lunch. It's gonna
right.
be," but again, it's like how we now am I saying that you should have a biscuit for every meal and then that's going to be great either?
Mm,
No,
right. Right. But that
it's
it's yeah,
yeah,
it's not gonna be the end of the world
not
because
gonna,
you enjoyed a biscuit.
exactly. And so being able to overcome those mental hurdles when you notice them with food and become aware of it, can be really hard because we're like trapped in a prison of our own making. But
Mhm.
it can really empower you to see how that same type of mindset is affecting so many other aspects of your life.
Absolutely.
And I just get so much fulfillment from seeing how the women I work with are able to enjoy their life so much more, go on vacations and have it honestly not just be about the food, when it used to be vacation means free for all with food. And it's like, now,
Right.
like, yeah, food is an additional great part about it. And I'm a foodie myself. I mean, I used to actually
Yeah.
work in the food industry specifically for years before I transitioned to having my own business.
Okay.
Um, so I get that, but like it's not about how can I make it's a I remember a client telling me like, "Oh, me planning the trip this time was like about what activities we can do, and then finding
Mm,
food places around those activities versus in the past would just be like, what's the food place, and then like how I center my entire then vacation around that."
right. Oh,
Um
so good.
and yeah, so being able to just like get your life and your freedom back, and not just freedom with food, but it's that freedom in how you're able to feel and show up in
Mm.
all aspects.
Yeah, so good. It is. It's definitely a domino effect and oh, so good, Casey. I am so excited. I definitely know that you will not be a stranger around here because we could dive into so much more, I know. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. It has been such an informative and just really inspiring conversation. I loved that, you shared with us not only your knowledge, but you also gave us some practical tips and just different ways to think about things. I think that's so important. And that's one of the things that I love to do, through our podcast is be able to have women be able to walk away not only feeling inspired and, feeling like, oh gosh, I've got all this information, but to also encourage them to really start taking the steps of action. So, taking a moment to today just practice that self compassion around food and around your body and who you are as a person. Just noticing, just that. I think sometimes we forget to notice that what our self talk is to
Mhm.
ourselves, and just even starting to notice that and really just want to, challenge our audience to have more thoughts of that kindness and that compassion because we all are worthy of feeling good in our own bodies, regardless of what that scale number says. So thank you. I know our audience has gained so much wisdom, lots of nuggets to reflect on. Casey, before we wrap up, what is the best way for them to be able to connect with you and learn more about your programs and what you're doing?
Awesome. Yeah. It's been such a pleasure. You're just such like a light to be able to speak with.
Oh,
Um, so I am your case for wellness on Instagram. Feel free to message me, like ask me any questions. I just love creating community and being able to help. And there is like a great, you can get my website, you can get information about my programs. I only honestly have a few open slots for coaching at this time, but I have one-on-one coaching. I have like partner coaching where you can work with your family member, your friends, whatnot, that you can work together in community.
awesome.
And that is what my open programs there. I have some courses too, though, that you can take a look at there. So that's how to work with me, how to get in touch with me.
Yes, awesome. And we'll include all of that in the show notes as well. So we will do that. And I just want to, again, thank you so much for joining us today. And for all of the listeners, remember, it's never too late to step into your purpose and create the life of your dreams. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know that the best is yet to come. Thanks for joining me. Oops. Well, this will be a nice little edit. Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.